as it relates to securing our future for our youth, what measures are being used to gauge school safety? And is there a point system? How do we actually gauge if a school is safe?
Very interesting question. So I've been talking about this as I'm in charge of compliance. Believe it or not, there are no national standards on school safety. There are best practices, promising practices. We are working currently with Washington, D.C. to the COPS office, Community Policing Office, to come up with some guidelines and best practices at the national level. At the state level, however, we do have some best practices that have been out since the mid-90s. The district has met those best practices throughout the years. Some of you might remember this as the old OPAGA. Currently, with the new legislation, requires every school in the entire state of Florida to do a risk and vulnerability assessment regarding the safety in the schools. That has to be done by August the 1st, and every year going forward it has to be done by August the 1st. Based on that assessment, we're to close the gaps on best practices. I can't tell you that you'll never, it's like when you deal with compliance, there's something like called OSHA, Occupational Safe Health Administration. So you try to stay as best as you can with the compliance, but you're never going to be totally compliant. So there are a number of best practices out there when it comes to target hardening, comes to technology, comes to integration of see something, say something, our Crime Stoppers. We're doing all those things. I can tell you that we were an award-winning school district through the school police to get a $4.7 million grant about 4 years ago that I helped write. And the grant just expired. And believe it or not, every single thing in that grant that measures school safety is currently being implemented in the school districts and is part of those best practice tools. So we know having access to security cameras, but don't make them look like a prison, works as long as somebody's monitoring them. We know having visitor management systems when you walk into school, checking to make sure sexual predators aren't coming into your school, knowing who's on your campus. We know having doors locked, having ID cards, and having the public interact with us and getting on committees like this and sharing information works. So there's a number of things between what I call human capital and technology to make it a balance. So this county is far ahead of the game compared to other districts. I can tell you that many people are calling us to find out, what are you doing here? Because it did not happen here.
Thank you. We'll take another question. Do we have any questions from the audience at this time? Speak loud.
So it's more like a statement where it's talking about like security at school. But like at my school, I kind of feel like attacked by the administration. Like they're trying to do like the security measures you do, but they do it on like a extreme level. Like say like I have my ID on, and they'll come to me like, "Where's your ID? Where's your ID?" Yelling at me. Or they like see me in the hallway, I don't have my ID. They'll go and miss my class time and stand in the hallway to tell me to put on my ID. So it's like at school, it's like I'm not like feeling safe at all. I just feel like I'm not like welcome at all at school.
That's an interesting comment because I read something the other day regarding exactly that kids today are feeling not safe because of the extra added pressures because of these demands. I can tell you that, and I know Dr. Dorothy Benjamin will tell you the same thing, all schools aren't the same, and we know all people aren't the same. Some people know how to deliver the message better than others. So that's something we have to work on from an administrative standpoint. I can tell you that through the compliance office, those are things we're looking for, but also it's how you deliver the message. So I can tell you that I apologize for that. I can tell you that's one of the things that I'll take back and we can work on with our administration, especially as we train them and we put information out. They need to be more care and sensitive regarding how they speak to kids for you to understand this is all new. It's new to you, it's new to them, but it's something they know they got to do. It's just a matter of how they deliver it.
Thank you very much. I don't want you to give me the name of the school with the audience listening, but at the end of this, I want to know, because it's important that you feel safe, but it's also important that you don't feel that you're put upon to miss class. I like hearing you say that, because some children might say, well, you know, I was late because I had to show my ID, but let me help you. And all of the children in this particular school. And even if it's not in District 2, as the chief said, I'll take the message back. So all of our children will be treated fairly. Thank you.
Any other questions?
So my question is for the school board. If Ron DeSantis is elected as governor of the United States, based off statistics, most Republicans like to cut off funds. And say in a hypothetically case that Ron DeSantis will cut off school board fund, like a good chunk of school board fund, how would you try to fight to reverse any cuts in school board budget?
Well, thank you very much. We have a real fighter in here. She's been called out already, Representative Watson. But before that, you're sitting here tonight in a forum that says ready, set, vote. We're going to prevent that by voting. We're not, thank you. We are not going to allow that. And I'm so glad you mentioned the funding. Our teachers are not paid what they are worth. But if we don't have the right people in Tallahassee, it does not matter how much you know that they're not being paid. They will not get what they, but we do have a referendum on the ballot. So I want those of you who can vote to vote and tell your parents to vote. I found out just the other day, and this is my trusty assistant, Matthew Tisdall, and today is his birthday, so say happy birthday, Matthew.
Happy birthday, Mom.
We found out the other day we have registered over 8,000 children. In Dayton. Yes. And we're working for you. But pass the word. If you're eligible, you need to go in there and vote. Let everyone know that, because if you don't do it, it won't get done. And if he wins, you're absolutely right. Did I say that? Thank you.
My question is to one of the commanders. I have a daughter that's going off to college, and you was talking about human trafficking. What are ways that you can give me to try to feel comfortable and try to keep her safe, knowing that she wants to go away from me in college?
Well, to make you feel comfortable and safe, but what you can tell her is, number one, she has to always be aware of her surroundings. A lot of times we find ourselves distracted by things, and I went away to school. My father had the same concerns, and believe it or not, I know I look, like a nice little young, female, but I'm actually a martial artist. I have been in the martial arts for over 30-something years, so I'm a trained fighter, and even at that time when I went away, I was considered an expert in hand-to-hand combat. My father still was afraid for me to go away because it's a girl. She has to be aware of her surroundings. She has to know the people that she's dealing with. When you're on campus, you need to know the campus area. Most school campuses have phones that can alert you in different areas. She has to know the area that she's in. And don't be so eager to make new friends that you don't know. Because a lot of times, the people that you think are your friends, they're really not your friends, and they are the ones that trick people into circumstances that they didn't think they would even be in. So that's one thing. And I would also say, make sure that when she is there and she does have friends that she knows for sure here, family members, that they travel together. And that may not make you feel like, it's okay right away, but she's gonna be okay. She's gonna be okay. If she wants to go away, you have to let her go off and do what she wants to do, so that she can grow up and know that you're sending her off with the right resources, the right things, that she'll be okay, all right? But just make sure that she's she knows her surroundings. She's not distracted on the telephone. A lot of times, our young people get on the phone and we texting and walking and things like that. She has to be aware of what's going on around her. Okay, and that even goes for being on the campus. Because we know that just because you're away at school doesn't mean that everything is all free and clear even when you're on campus. Okay?
Any other questions?
What school is she going to?
We haven't decided yet.
All right, so I'm gonna give you my number. Give me a call. I know lots of school chiefs all over the United States.
Okay.
We'll start there first. How about that? All right.
Says he's going to have chiefs calling you when we call. What I'm going to say is, I believe that you've already taught her everything that she needs to know to be safe. And you not only have taught her that, but it's important that she stays around people who think just like she does. And she's got to be very careful when it comes to just socializing haphazardly. She ought to go to places where she knows the practices are pretty safe, and the parties are fun, but they're not reckless, that kind of thing. And she needs to always be responsible. I have a daughter who went away to Tallahassee, and I was worried just like you, but I was so glad that some of the things we reported her before she left came out.
School board member, while we're speaking about safety, you've come out several times here on Saturdays for our back to school event for girls. And that event is usually predicated upon stopping bullying. And as we know, bullying is not only face-to-face nowadays, it's on Snapchat, it's Instagram, it's just everywhere. What are some things that the district is doing right now to help address that and alleviate the bullying that's going on in our schools?
That's a very interesting question, and I think all of us can add to it. The bullying aspect of that which we want to talk about, we know it's going to happen. It's not something that's not going to happen. Children will be bullied because they look a little different. They speak a little different. But we have pretty much solved the dress problem because almost everyone is in uniform. We pretty much have done a lot of counseling. We have the trust counselors. We have workshops for teachers. And the teachers are supposed to take that information back to their classes and work with their children. And I tell you what else happens, that's why I want to know about the school. We have people who walk the campuses all day pretty much looking to see if everyone is all right. But you know, the schools are a microcosm of the community. We have all kinds of children there. And you have to know that something could happen just like that. But as the parents just said, we do our very best to have the parents know. Do what you can to teach your children about bullying and what bullying really, really, really means. Now, I get a phone call almost every day. Almost every day. Ordinarily, we wanted to give you a heads up. Chief Moffitt, we just talked. Because he knows I want to know. He knows that I care. All board members care, but District 2 is different. So you have to make sure that you do everything that you can. And we have police officers who are trained to counsel children. We do whatever we can to save our children, but if someone wants to commit an infraction, they're going to find a way to do it. So we do the see something, say something, tell someone. We bring in as many counselors as we can to talk to children. Children have so much difficulties, so many difficulties, that when we are talking to them, we've got to look them eye to eye and make sure that they're understanding us and we're reading them. But all of the things that I mentioned, one more that I should mention, we are doing in almost all schools, we have a success center. Children go in there rather than being put out of schools, and they get the training and the discipline that they truly deserve. But the one thing that the chief will tell you that I told him I always wanted to see happen, is that we discuss everything with our parents. Bless you. We have our parents come in and talk with them, because they're the ones who send us their babies, and they have been taught. You read the papers, you watch the news, you know that adults sometimes cannot handle being bullied. And usually when you have those children in your classrooms, they behave exactly like their parents. So we have to work on the home too. But there's so much more that we can do. And I mentioned a third part of what we can do to help our children. And I know a lot of people don't like to talk about this, but it's the clergy. Most of them are trained counselors. So we're working on getting them in and adopting schools so that they can help with this bullying aspect. I think if you have something more to add to that, we'll be glad to hear it, because we don't know it all at the school board. Thank you.
Mr. Gaines, you have a follow-up?
Thank you. One of the things you mentioned earlier, the programming, National PTA through its website, pta.org, and that's not just for you members, but of course I prefer you join, provides resources with regards to a number of these things with regards to school safety, bullying on social media, resources for mom who's got a child that's going away to college. I feel your pain. I wish I could keep them in my back pocket. But these resources are available to you. So if you want to, you can always visit pta.org. It's presented to you in the formats of some webinars, some little hip pocket trainings, but a huge focus right now is with regards to our children and their social media usage, and how to, I know it's hard to monitor that with older children, but it's extremely important that we are everywhere our children are and trying to figure out what it is that they're doing. So those resources are available to you if you'd like to check out that website.
If I may also, in probably the next 10 to 14 days, the state of Florida will launch something called Fortify Florida. It's a new app that's in the legislation under Senate Bill 726. This app is to provide for anonymous tips to school officials and law enforcement regarding issues happening in schools. Based on the information we have from the manufacturer of the app, they know that at least 75 to 80% of those tips are going to deal with bullying. It'll be anonymous, or you can let us know who you are. Those tips will come directly to the school site, to law enforcement, and we have to act on those tips. So there's going to be more awareness. There's a lot of resources inside and outside the schools, but you'll probably see a lot more tips coming in so we can actually prevent these things from getting out of hand.
Thank you. Any other questions from the audience?